The day ends quietly here as it always does, with the softening of light and the slow retreat of warmth from the stone paths. You stand near the main gate, holding a bamboo broom, and you let your eyes follow the last pale strip of sun as it slips behind the western hills. The sky is a wash of faint orange and grey, the colours of cooling embers. There is no hurry in your body. The broom rests lightly in your hands, its long handle smoothed by years of use. The bamboo bristles, splayed and worn at the ends, from countless evenings just like this one. You have been sweeping the temple path since the afternoon began to fade, and now the work is nearly done. The path stretches from the outer gate to the steps of the main hall, a walkway of flat stones set into the earth with moss growing in the cracks. Your broom moves across the surface in steady, unhurried arcs, gathering fallen pine needles, small dry leaves, and the fine dust that the wind carries down from the mountain. The sound the bristles make is a soft, hushing whisper, a voice that speaks only of friction and patience. You pause after each long stroke to breathe in the cool air and to listen. The broom falls still for a moment. The world around you continues without any need for your attention. From the tall cryptomeria trees that stand like dark pillars along the eastern wall, the crows are settling. You can hear them rustling among the high branches, their wings brushing against the needles with a sound like old paper being folded. One bird calls out, a single rough note that hangs in the air before fading into the thickening dusk. Then another answers from farther away, its voice softer, already half swallowed by the distance. You do not look up. You know their shapes by heart. Every evening they return to these trees, black forms merging with black branches, and by the time the first star appears they will be silent. You sweep another section of the path, shifting the broom to your left hand when your right grows tired. The handle feels cool and dry, the bamboo skin slightly ridged under your fingers. You notice a place where the bristles have worn shorter on one side, a small unevenness that has been there for many months. It does not affect the work. It only means you must sometimes angle the broom differently to catch the last bits of debris. You do this without thinking now, the movement as natural as breathing. The air carries the scent of dry earth and pine resin, a clean sharpness that opens the lungs. Mingled with it is the faint, ancient smell of the temple wood, cypress and cedar, that have stood in sun and rain for more than 100 years. You can smell the faintest trace of incense drifting from the main hall, a thread of sandalwood left over from the morning offering. All these scents blend into a single quiet perfume, the smell of the temple at dusk. You pull the air in slowly and let it go, watching your breath appear as a small ghost of vapor. The season is turning, the days are warm, but the evenings now carry a suggestion of cold. As you sweep, your wooden sandals make a gentle clacking on the stone, a rhythm that matches the sweep of the broom. Two sounds together, hush and clack, a duet of simple labor. You follow the path around the corner of the bell tower, a square wooden structure that rises 2 stories, its dark beams heavy and straight. The great bronze bell hangs invisible inside, wrapped in its own silence. You will not go up there until much later, when the night is deep and the stars have shifted. For now you only pass beneath it, and your footsteps echo slightly against its base, a hollow wooden resonance that fades as you move on. Near the wash basin, you stop. The basin is a rough-hewn stone with a hollowed center, always full of clear water that trickles in from a bamboo pipe. You lean the broom against the side of the basin and cup your hands under the thin stream. The water is cold, colder than the air, and it shocks your skin pleasantly. You splash a little onto your face, feeling the dust of the path wash away, then dry your hands on the front of your dark robe. The rough cotton absorbs the moisture quickly. You pick up the broom again and stand for a moment watching the water overflow the basin's edge and drip onto the moss below, each drop a tiny note in the quiet. The paper lantern at the gate has been lit now, though you did not see who did it. Perhaps the young acolyte slipped past while you were at the basin. The lantern glows with a warm orange light, a steady flame behind oiled paper, and it casts a soft circle of illumination onto the ground. Moths have already begun to gather, small pale wings flickering in and out of the glow. You watch them without thought, simply receiving the image as part of the evening. The lantern will burn until midnight, and then be extinguished, but right now it is a small sun against the gathering dark. You walk back to where you left off sweeping, and you notice that a few more leaves have fallen since you passed, loosened by the stirring of the birds. You sweep them into a small pile along with pine needles and bits of twig. The pile grows slowly, a collection of the day's gentle shedding. Later, you will gather it into a bamboo basket and carry it to the compost behind the kitchen, but not yet. There is still light enough to see by, a dim grey brightness that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. From the valley below you hear the distant sound of a wooden mallet striking a block, perhaps a farmer securing a fence post before nightfall. The sound travels up the slope, softened by the trees until it reaches you as a muffled thump that could just as easily be your own heartbeat. You pause, the broom held still, and you listen for more. The sound does not repeat. Instead, the wind stirs the tops of the pines, a long sigh that moves from one side of the temple grounds to the other. You feel it on your face, a cool brush that carries the dampness of the forest. The wind has its own language, a constant soft roar when you stand still enough to hear it. It never ceases entirely. Even on the calmest days, there is some movement of air through the high branches. You return to sweeping, reaching the edge of the path where it meets the moss garden. Here the stones give way to a carpet of deep green moss that spreads around the bases of several large rocks. The moss is damp and springy underfoot, and you step carefully onto its edge only when necessary. You use the broom to lift stray pine needles from the moss without disturbing its surface, a delicate operation that requires a light touch. The broom's bristles just barely kiss the green, lifting the needles away one by one. This is a task you could rush, but you do not. There is nothing else waiting for your time. The evening is long and slow, and every needle removed leaves the moss a little more perfect. By the time you finish with the moss garden, the light has faded to a deep twilight blue. The shapes of the trees are now solid black against the sky, and the lantern's glow has become the brightest point in your vision. You walk slowly back toward the main path, carrying the broom over your shoulder. Your body feels the pleasant fatigue of steady work, a looseness in the arms, and a slight ache in the lower back. You stretch briefly, reaching your hands toward the darkening sky, then let them fall. At the kitchen entrance, you pause to remove your sandals, leaving them on the stone step next to another pair. The wooden floor inside is smooth and cool under your bare feet. You place the broom in its usual corner, leaning it beside the other tools, a rake with worn wooden teeth, a small hand sickle, a coil of rope. Everything in its place. The kitchen smells of cold ash and charcoal, the remains of the morning fire still sitting in the sunken hearth. You will light it again soon to make your evening meal, but for now you simply stand in the dim room, letting your eyes adjust. A single window looks out toward the garden, and through it you can see the first star of evening, a bright point of silver just above the mountain ridge. You look at it for a long moment, the way you do every clear night, and then you turn away to light the small oil lamp on the wooden shelf. The wick catches with a soft pop, and the flame steadies into a small yellow teardrop. It throws dancing shadows on the plastered walls and makes the grain of the wooden counter glow warmly. You set the lamp on the low table where you will eat, and you go to the clay pot where the rice is kept. You measure out 1 cup of rice, the grains white and cool as they pour into the wooden bowl. At the well outside the kitchen door, you draw water and rinse the rice 3 times, each time swirling the grains and pouring off the cloudy water until it runs almost clear. The well water is always cold, numbing your fingers pleasantly, and the rope creaks in its pulley as you raise and lower the bucket. When the rice is clean, you set it aside in a pot, and go to gather a few sticks of kindling from the woodpile under the eaves. The kindling is dry and snaps easily in your hands. You arrange it in the hearth, place a small piece of charcoal on top, and strike the flint until a spark catches and a tiny flame curls upward. You feed the fire slowly, adding twigs one by one, until it is strong enough to hold the charcoal's glow. The rice pot goes onto the iron trivet, and you pour water over the grains until it reaches the first knuckle of your index finger. You cover the pot with a wooden lid, and the waiting begins. You do not watch the pot, you simply know the time it takes, the way the water will simmer and then steam, the way the smell will change from wet grain to something sweeter. In the meantime, you slice a pickled radish into thin rounds, the knife making a crisp sound against the cutting board. The radish is pale yellow and tart, its vinegar scent sharp in the small kitchen. You place the slices on a small ceramic plate and set it on the table. From a covered jar, you take a spoonful of miso paste, dark brown and glossy, and you dissolve it in a pot of water over a smaller flame. The soup comes together with a few cubes of soft tofu and a sprinkle of dried seaweed. The seaweed unfurls in the hot liquid, turning from dark purple to deep green. You stir slowly with a wooden spoon, watching the miso cloud the water into a rich broth. The steam rises, carrying the savory scent of fermented soybeans and the faint sweetness of the seaweed. Your stomach tightens, but it is a gentle hunger, not urgent. While the soup heats, you step outside once more to the small garden plot behind the kitchen. There, by the light of the lantern you have carried with you, you pick a few leaves of green shiso and a stem of mitsuba. The herbs are cool and fragrant between your fingers. You rinse them under the well pump, then carry them inside, where you tear the shiso into strips and chop the mitsuba finely. They will go on top of the rice and the soup, a little freshness at the end. You hear the rice pot begin its soft chattering, the sound of water boiling and the lid rattling slightly. You lower the flame by shifting the charcoal aside and let it simmer. The kitchen has grown warm now, the fire a steady orange glow in the hearth. Shadows dance on the rafters where bundles of dried herbs hang upside down, and the smoke from the fire curls up to the hole in the roof and escapes into the night. You sit on a low stool near the hearth, your hands folded in your lap, and you wait. Waiting is easy here. The fire crackles. The wind brushes against the wooden shutters. A night heron calls once from the direction of the stream. The world is full of small sounds that ask nothing of you. When the rice is ready, you lift the pot with a cloth and set it on a woven straw trivet. The steam billows up, hot and white, carrying the scent of cooked grain. You fluff the rice with a wooden paddle, turning it gently so the steam escapes and the grains separate. You fill a small bowl for yourself, heap the pickled radish beside it, and ladle the miso soup into a lacquered bowl. The green herbs you scatter on top brighten the simple meal. You eat slowly, sitting cross-legged on the tatami mat, the lamp casting a warm circle around you. The rice is tender and slightly sticky, its flavor clean and mild. The pickle provides a sharp counterpoint, making your jaw tingle, and the soup is salty and rich with the taste of the sea. You chew each mouthful many times, setting the chopsticks down between bites to breathe and look out the small window at the dark shapes of trees. There is no conversation, no need for words. The only sound is the soft clink of ceramic on wood and the quiet working of your jaw. Outside, the wind continues its endless movement through the pines, a sound that will accompany your sleep tonight and be there when you wake. When the meal is finished, you wash the bowls at the well by lantern light. The cold water from the pump splashes over your hands, and you use a rough cloth to scrub away any remaining bits of food. You dry each bowl with care and return them to the wooden shelf. The pot you rinse and leave upside down on a cloth. The hearth you leave to burn down slowly. The remaining charcoal will reduce to ash by morning. You make sure the water bucket is full for the night, then extinguish the kitchen lamp by lifting the glass shade and blowing gently across the flame. The smell of hot oil and smoke lingers in the dark. You walk across the courtyard to your sleeping quarters, carrying only a small hand lantern now. The gravel crunches under your sandals, a sound that seems loud in the complete darkness beyond the temple walls. You look up and see the stars have fully emerged, countless points of cold light scattered across the sky. The Milky Way is a pale river running from the mountain ridge to the horizon, and you pause for a moment to take it in. The night air is crisp and clean, and you can see your breath again. The temple buildings rise as dark masses around you, their curved roofs silhouetted against the star field. This is your home, every beam and stone, every patch of moss and grain of sand. You know it all by feel, by the memory of your feet. Your quarters are a small room with tatami mats and a single window that looks out onto the inner garden. You slide open the wooden door, its frame running smoothly in the oiled groove, and you step inside. The room smells of old straw and the faint incense that clings to your robe. You light a small oil lamp on the low alcove shelf, where a simple scroll hangs with a single character painted in black ink, stillness. You look at it every night, letting the shape of the brushstroke settle into your mind. Then you take off your outer robe and hang it on a wooden peg, leaving on the softer inner garment. You fold the sash neatly and place it beside your bedding. The futon is already laid out, a thick cotton mattress on the tatami with a pillow stuffed with buckwheat hulls. You will not sleep yet, not for many hours. Your task tonight is not to rest, but to keep the vigil, to be the one who waits while the world sleeps. So you sit instead on a round cushion in the center of the room, your legs folded, your hands resting lightly on your thighs. The lamp burns steadily at your side, and the window shows only blackness now, the garden invisible. You breathe in and out, slowly, letting your thoughts settle like dust after sweeping. In the stillness, you become aware of the many small sounds that fill the temple at night. The wooden beams contract with a soft tick as the temperature drops. A mouse scurries somewhere under the floor, its tiny claws scratching briefly before silence returns. The wind moves around the eaves with a low hum, sometimes rising to a soft moan before dropping away. You listen to each sound as it comes, not holding on to any of them, just letting them pass through you. The heron calls again, farther off this time. An owl answers from the deep forest, its voice a series of hollow notes that seem to measure the darkness. The stream at the bottom of the valley is a constant white noise beneath everything else, a hushing that never ends. You sit in this way for a long stretch, time becoming a soft and shapeless thing. Your body feels heavy and warm, grounded on the cushion, the small aches of the day's work now fading into a gentle hum. The flame in the lamp flickers slightly, and you reach out with the small metal pick to trim the wick, evening out the burn. The light steadies again, a small dependable sun. You can feel the hour growing late, though you do not own a clock. The position of the stars through the window tells you it is perhaps the middle of the night, the hour when even the insects pause in their calling. You think of the bell waiting in its tower, the great bronze shape hanging in perfect silence. You think of the wooden beam you will carry later, the rope you will pull. But these thoughts are not urgent. They are simply there, like the star out the window, like the breath moving in and out of your lungs. You allow them to drift and fade. Another sound comes, this time the soft pattering of a light rain beginning to fall on the roof tiles. The drops are few at first, a scattered tapping that gradually steadies into a gentle rhythm. You listen to the rain, grateful for its presence. It will wash the dust from the leaves and fill the stone basin to overflowing. Tomorrow the path will be damp and clean, and the air will smell of wet earth and pine. You will sweep again, but the work will be different, the broom sliding easily over the moist stones. The rain continues for a time, and you close your eyes. Behind your eyelids the darkness is warm and red with the lamp's glow. You are not asleep, only resting in that borderland where the mind floats free. The sound of the rain on the roof wraps around you like a blanket, and you let yourself drift. The vigil is long, but it is never a burden. It is simply the quiet heart of the night, and you are its steady keeper. Outside, the crows sleep soundly in the cryptomeria, their black feathers tucked against the rain. The lantern at the gate still burns, its flame protected by the paper housing. The whole temple rests in a soft suspension, waiting for the first light, and you wait with it, patient as the stone basin, still as the bell. The rain that began in the deep night has stopped now, leaving behind a rinsed silence that feels cleaner than before. You rise from your cushions slowly, your joints speaking in small pops, and you slide open the wooden shutter of your window to look out at the inner garden. The air that enters is cold and wet, heavy with the smell of soaked earth and dripping pine. Every surface gleams faintly in the starlight, the stones of the path reflecting a dull silver sheen where water has pooled. You breathe in deeply, letting the freshness fill your lungs, then close the shutter again to keep the warmth inside. The lamp still burns on the alcove shelf, its flame a steady teardrop of yellow light, and by its glow you can see the thin trail of incense smoke still rising from the holder near the scroll. The character for stillness catches your eye, as it always does. The black ink strokes bold and unwavering even in the dimness. Your body tells you that several hours have passed since you first sat down on the cushion, the stretch of time marked not by any clock, but by the subtle shift in your own internal rhythm. There is a particular quality to the air in the deepest part of night, a stillness so complete that even the insects have fallen silent and the wind holds its breath. You have felt this hour many times before, the point when the world seems suspended between one day and the next, belonging fully to neither. It is in this hour that you often take your night meal, a quiet repast that sustains you through the remaining darkness until dawn. You straighten your inner robe, run your fingers through your hair to smooth it back, and slide open the door to step out into the corridor. The wooden floor of the covered walkway is cool under your bare feet, the planks worn smooth by generations of monks who walked this same path in the same deep quiet. You pass the main hall on your left, its great doors closed and dark, the incense from the day's offerings now faded to a ghost of sandalwood that lingers only if you stand very still and breathe deliberately. You do not pause. You know the scent well, and it will be renewed in the morning. The roof eaves above you drip occasionally, the last of the rainwater sliding from the curved tiles to land with a soft plink in the gravel below. The sound is irregular, a random pattern that your mind does not try to predict, and this randomness is part of its calming quality. The kitchen stands at the end of the walkway, a small separate building with its own entrance facing the vegetable garden. You push open the wooden door, and the familiar smell of cold ash and dried herbs greets you. Inside it is darker than the corridor, but your hands know the way. You find the flint and steel on their shelf, strike a spark into the tinder, and light the same oil lamp you extinguished earlier. The flame catches and grows, pushing back the shadows to reveal the hearth, the low table, the rows of clay pots and wooden containers. Everything is exactly as you left it, the washed bowls upturned on their cloth, the rice pot clean and dry beside the hearth. You kneel before the sunken hearth and begin to rebuild the fire. The ash from your earlier meal is still faintly warm when you push it aside with a small iron poker, and you uncover a few small embers glowing dimly at the center, remnants of the charcoal that had seemed completely spent. You gather a handful of dry pine needles from the basket by the wall, and lay them gently over the embers, then lower your head to blow softly across them. The needles catch with a crackle and a curl of white smoke, and you add twigs one by one, the smallest first, letting the flame grow at its own pace. There is no need to hurry. The fire will come when it is ready, and you have learned to match your rhythm to its own. When the twigs are burning well, you place a fresh piece of charcoal on top and sit back on your heels to watch it ignite. The charcoal blackens further along one edge, then begins to glow a deep orange that spreads slowly across its surface like dawn moving across a valley. You feel the warmth on your face and hands, a welcome sensation after the damp chill of the corridor, and you hold your palms out toward the flames, turning them slowly. The fire crackles and pops, sending tiny sparks upward into the flue, and you watch them rise and vanish. Now you rise and go to the clay pot where the rice is stored, measuring out 1 cup of the white grains into a wooden bowl, just as you did for the evening meal. The rice pours in a steady stream, each grain distinct, and the sound it makes against the wood is a soft shushing that reminds you of the broom on the path. You step outside to the well, the wet gravel cold under your soles, and you draw up a bucket of water. The rope is damp from the rain, slightly swollen, and it grips the pulley differently than when it is dry. You note this without comment, simply adjusting your pull to accommodate the change. The water splashes into the bucket, and you carry it inside, the weight pulling at your arm pleasantly. Rinsing the rice is a ritual in itself, one you perform with the same attention you give to sweeping or sitting. You pour water over the grains and swirl them with your hand, feeling the slight resistance of the water and the smoothness of the rice against your palm. The water clouds immediately with fine starch, turning a milky white. You pour it off carefully into a waste bowl, repeating the process twice more until the water runs almost clear. The cold well water numbs your fingers, and you pause once to cup your hands together and breathe warm air into them. When the rice is clean, you add fresh water to the pot and set it on the iron trivet over the now glowing charcoal. The lid goes on with a soft clink of pottery against pottery, and the waiting begins again. While the rice heats, you prepare the other elements of your meal. From a ceramic jar on the shelf you take a pickled plum, its skin wrinkled and deep red, the color of old lacquer. You place it on a small dish, the salty sour scent reaching your nose immediately. Beside it you arrange a few slices of pickled daikon left over from the evening, their pale yellow catching the lamplight. You pour a small amount of soy sauce into a shallow dish, watching the dark liquid settle and reflect the flame above it. These simple things are all you need: rice, pickle, a touch of salt and umami to wake the tongue. You sit on the low stool near the hearth, listening to the fire and the distant sound of the stream. The stream's voice is louder tonight, swollen by the rain, a constant rushing that underlies everything else. You can hear it through the kitchen walls, a sound so steady and ancient that it might as well be the breathing of the mountain itself. The water in the rice pot begins to murmur, a low gurgling that builds gradually to a steady simmer. The lid rattles softly, and you rise to shift the charcoal, lowering the heat so the rice will steam gently without boiling over. From the shelf you take down a small clay teapot and a container of green tea leaves. The teapot is plain, unglazed on the outside but smooth brown on the inside, and it fits comfortably in your hand. You set a pot of water on the hearth beside the rice, not over the flame, but near enough to warm slowly. The tea will come after the meal, a final comfort before you return to the vigil. For now, the thought of it sits quietly in the back of your mind, something to look forward to without anticipation. The kitchen has grown warm now, the lamp and the hearth together filling the small space with a golden light that feels sheltered and safe, with a golden light that feels sheltered and safe. Outside, the night continues in its deep stillness, but in here there is a small pocket of life and warmth. You think of the temple grounds spreading out around you in the dark, the wet paths and dripping trees, the bell tower standing silent, the main hall with its closed doors. All of it rests while you keep this small flame alive. It is a quiet responsibility, one that asks nothing but your presence, and you give it freely. When the rice is ready, you lift the pot with a cloth and carry it to the low table. The steam rises in a thick white column, and you inhale its sweet, clean smell before fluffing the grains with the wooden paddle. You fill a small bowl for yourself, the rice mounded and pearly in the lamplight, and you place the pickled plum in its center like a dark jewel. The contrast of colors pleases you in a simple way that requires no analysis. You sit cross-legged on the tatami mat, Arrange the dishes before you and press your palms together briefly in a gesture of gratitude that has become as natural as breathing. You eat slowly, picking up grains of rice with your chopsticks and chewing each mouthful until it becomes almost liquid. The pickled plum is intensely sour and salty, so you take only a tiny bit with each bite, letting it cut through the mildness of the rice. Your jaw works in slow circles, and you find your gaze resting on the grain of the wooden table, following its lines without thought. There is no hurry in this meal. The night is still long, and the bell will not ring for hours yet. You are simply a body nourishing itself, a small flame keeping its fuel steady. The daikon provides a different kind of crunch, milder than the plum, and you alternate between the two pickles as the mood takes you. The soy sauce remains mostly untouched, just a dark mirror on the table. A moth has come in through the smoke hole and now circles the lamp, its shadow huge and fluttering on the wall. You watch it for a moment, then return to your rice. The moth will find its way out, or it will not. There is nothing you need to do about it. After a while, it settles on the wooden beam above the lamp and becomes still, its wings folded into a small brown triangle. When the bowl is empty, you sit for a moment with your hands in your lap, feeling the warmth of the food inside you. The hunger that was gentle before is now completely gone, replaced by a comfortable fullness that makes your eyelids heavy. But you do not close them yet. There is still the tea to make, and the dishes to wash, and the long hours of the vigil ahead. You rise and carry the bowls to the washing basin, a shallow wooden tub beside the door, where you pour water from the bucket and scrub each dish with a hemp cloth until it is clean. The motions are repetitive and soothing, the cloth moving in circles, the water sloshing softly. You dry the bowls and set them back on the shelf, then turn your attention to the tea. The water on the hearth has begun to steam, small bubbles forming at the bottom of the pot and rising slowly to the surface. You pour a little of the hot water into the teapot to warm it, swirling it around and then discarding it into the waste bowl. Into the warmed pot you spoon 2 scoops of green tea leaves, the dry fragments rustling like paper. You pour the hot water over them, not boiling, but just off the boil. The temperature that releases the leaves' flavor without bitterness. The steam that rises carries a grassy sweetness, a scent that always reminds you of spring even in the coldest months. You replace the lid and wait, counting your breaths, letting the leaves unfurl in the dark water. After a suitable pause, you pour the tea into a small ceramic cup. The liquid a pale green-yellow, slightly cloudy. You lift the cup in both hands, feeling the warmth transfer through the clay into your palms, and you breathe in the steam before taking the first sip. The taste is vegetal and clean, slightly astringent, but with a sweetness underneath, and it washes over your tongue like a quiet statement. You drink slowly, cup after cup, until the pot is empty. The warmth spreads through your chest and settles in your stomach, a gentle heat that radiates outward. You rinse the teapot and cup, dry them and return them to their shelf. The fire in the hearth has burned down again to glowing coals, and you decide to let it go out naturally. The kitchen will cool as the night goes on, but you will not be here. You will be in the meditation hall, or walking the grounds, or climbing the bell tower. The thought of the bell enters your mind again, and this time it stays a little longer. You picture its dark shape hanging in the tower, the bronze cold and still, the rope dangling beneath it like a sleeping serpent. The beam that will strike it rests now in the storehouse, wrapped in cloth, waiting. You will retrieve it later, but not yet. There is still time. You extinguish the kitchen lamp by lifting the glass shade and blowing gently across the flame, and the room falls into darkness except for the faint orange glow of the dying coals. You stand for a moment in the dark, letting your eyes adjust, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the distant rush of the stream. Then you slide open the door and step back out onto the covered walkway, the cold air meeting your warm face with a slight shock that clears the last cobwebs of drowsiness from your mind. The sky has changed while you were inside. The clouds from the rain have moved east, revealing a field of stars even brighter than before. The Milky Way stretches from horizon to horizon, a road of light that seems close enough to touch. You walk slowly along the corridor, your footsteps quiet on the smooth wood, and you pause at the corner where the walkway turns toward the meditation hall. From here you can see the bell tower silhouetted against the stars, its two-tiered roof curving upward at the corners like a dark bird about to take flight. You look at it for a long moment, then continue on your way. The meditation hall is a larger room with a high ceiling and a wooden floor polished by countless hours of walking and sitting. You slide open the door and enter, the space so familiar that you move through it without needing light. You know where the cushions are, where the altar stands against the far wall, where the low table holds a vase of dried branches and a small incense burner. You find your usual cushion and settle onto it, folding your legs and resting your hands on your thighs. The darkness in here is almost complete, broken only by the faint starlight that filters through the paper screens. It is a comfortable darkness, a blanket rather than a void, and you let it wrap around you. Your breathing slows naturally as you sit, the rhythm of your body syncing with the quiet pulse of the night. The food and tea have done their work, grounding you in a steady warmth that will carry you through until dawn. You think of the lanterns that line the temple path, their flames still burning under small paper hoods, each one a tiny point of light in the vast dark. Soon you will walk that path again, refilling the oil reservoirs and trimming the wicks, making sure the light holds until the sun takes over. But for now, you simply sit. The stream continues its endless song, the stars wheel slowly overhead, and the temple rests around you like a great sleeping creature, peaceful and still. The meditation hall holds you in its dark embrace for a long while, the silence so complete that you can hear the faint settling of your own bones as you shift on the cushion. When the time feels right, a sense that comes not from thought, but from a quiet inner prompting, you open your eyes to the dim starlight filtering through the paper screens. The room is just as it was, the altar a dark shape against the wall, the dried branches in their vase throwing angular shadows. You place your palms on the floor and rise slowly, feeling the tatami give slightly under your weight, and you stretch your arms upward until your shoulders release a soft pop. The night has moved forward. You can tell by the angle of the shadows and the deeper chill in the air. It is now the hour for tending the lanterns and visiting the bell. You slide open the door and step out into the corridor, where the cold wraps around your ankles and climbs up your legs. Your wooden sandals wait by the step, and you slip them on, the familiar smoothness of the worn wood pressing against your soles. The covered walkway leads you past the kitchen, its door still open a crack from when you left it, the faintest smell of cold charcoal drifting out. You continue toward the small supply room near the front gate, a narrow space tucked between the outer wall and the wash basin, where the temple keeps its oils, wicks, and spare lantern paper. The door slides open with a low rumble, and you step inside, the air thick with the scent of camellia oil and old wood. A small shelf holds the supplies in tidy arrangement. You reach for the clay pot of lamp oil, its surface cool and slightly greasy under your fingers, and you lift it carefully, feeling the liquid shift inside. Beside it lies a bundle of fresh wicks made from twisted cotton, and you take a few, tucking them into the sleeve of your robe. You also pick up a soft cloth, a square of old cotton that has been washed so many times it is almost translucent in places, and you fold it over your arm. These three things are all you need: oil for the flames, wicks for the burning, cloth for the cleaning. You carry them out into the night, the pot cradled against your chest, the door sliding shut behind you with a soft thud. The path of stone lanterns begins at the main gate and winds its way through the temple grounds, marking the route to the bell tower and beyond. There are 12 lanterns in total, spaced at intervals along the walkways, each one a squat stone pillar with a hollow top chamber covered by a small roof of stone or wood. Some are round, some hexagonal, their shapes softened by centuries of rain and moss. You know them individually, the way a farmer knows his trees, or a fisherman his nets. Each has its own character, its own slight lean or chip, its own pattern of moss and lichen. You approach the first one, which stands just inside the gate beside the paper lantern that still burns with its steady orange glow. The paper lantern is for the evening. The stone lanterns are for the deep night, burning until dawn. You set the oil pot down on the gravel and kneel beside the first lantern. The stone is cold and damp, the moss slick under your touch as you reach for the small door in the side of the lantern's upper chamber. The door is a thin piece of stone that slides sideways in a groove, and you push it open with a gentle scraping sound. Inside, the chamber is dark, the wick from the previous night reduced to a blackened stub in a small pool of oil. You tilt the lantern to let the old oil drain into a waste groove at the base, then use the cloth to wipe the interior clean, removing the soot and any dead insects that have found their way inside. The cloth comes away grey and you fold it to a clean side before moving on. From your sleeve you take a fresh wick, a length of twisted cotton about the width of your little finger, and you thread it through the small hole in the oil reservoir so that one end sits in the oil while the other stands upright, ready to catch the flame. You pour oil from the clay pot into the reservoir, the liquid pale gold and viscous, filling it to just below the rim. The oil glugs softly as it leaves the pot, and you tilt the pot back with care to avoid spilling any on the stone. When the reservoir is full, you take out your flint and steel, strike a spark onto a bit of charred cloth until it glows, and touch it to the new wick. The flame catches with a soft pop, a tiny sound that is both sudden and gentle, and it steadies into a small bright tongue of yellow that pushes back the darkness around you. The light spills out through the open door of the lantern and paints a warm circle on the gravel path, catching the edges of the moss and making them glow green gold. You slide the stone door closed, leaving a small gap for air, and you watch the lantern for a moment to make sure the flame is drawing oil properly. The light flickers once, then settles into a steady burn. Satisfied, you pick up the oil pot and move on to the second lantern, which stands at the turn of the path where it begins to slope upward toward the bell tower. The walk between lanterns is short, only 20 or 30 paces, and your sandals make a soft crunching on the gravel that keeps time with your breathing. The night air is still and colder, the earlier rain now only a memory of dampness underfoot and the occasional drip from a pine bough. The second lantern is slightly different from the first, its roof a hexagonal slab of stone that has weathered to a rough grey, its corners rounded by time. The moss here is thicker, a deep cushion of emerald that covers the base and creeps up the sides. You kneel again, the gravel pressing into your knees through the fabric of your robe, and you repeat the same careful sequence of motions. Slide open the door, tilt out the old oil, wipe the interior with the cloth, thread a new wick, pour fresh oil, strike the spark, watch the flame bloom. Each action flows into the next without hurry, a quiet ritual that your body knows so well your mind can wander freely while your hands do their work. The flame in this lantern catches a little faster, the wick drier than the first, and it burns with a slightly taller flame that you trim by pinching the wick gently between your fingers before the fire can take hold. The brief heat against your fingertips is a reminder of the flame's reality, and you rub your thumb and forefinger together afterward, feeling the slight warmth fade. You continue along the path, stopping at each lantern in turn. The third stands beside the stone wash basin, and you pause there to rinse your hands in the cold water before tending the flame. The fourth is tucked under the eaves of the main hall, its light reflecting off the dark wood of the building. The fifth marks a small bridge over a dry stream bed, a flat stone arch that crosses a channel where water runs only during the rainy season. Tonight it is empty, lined with smooth pebbles that glisten with residual moisture. You work your way through the temple grounds, the sky above you slowly shifting as the stars wheel toward dawn. The moon has risen now, a thin crescent that hangs low in the eastern sky, its light too faint to cast shadows, but bright enough to outline the shapes of the trees and the curved roofs of the buildings. By the time you reach the eighth lantern, your hands are moving with a rhythm that feels like breathing. Pour the oil, thread the wick, strike the spark, watch the flame. The cloth has become thoroughly soiled, dark with soot and oil, and you fold it to find a final clean corner. The clay pot has grown lighter, the oil level dropping with each lantern you fill. You calculate without thinking how much remains and whether it will be enough for the remaining lanterns. It will be, with a little to spare for tomorrow. The temple always keeps a larger jar of oil in the storehouse, and you will refill the pot from it when the night is over. The ninth lantern stands at the base of the bell tower, its stone surface covered with a particularly beautiful patch of moss that has grown in a pattern like a map of distant islands. You kneel here longer than at the others, not because the work requires it, but because you want to look at the moss, the way the lamplight from the previous lantern catches its tiny leaves and turns them into a miniature forest of green flames. The world is full of such small wonders, and the night offers them freely to anyone who moves slowly enough to notice. You pour the oil with extra care, not wanting to spill even a drop on this delicate growth, and when the flame catches inside the lantern, the light seems to make the moss glow from within. Now only 3 lanterns remain, and they are farther apart, marking the path that leads away from the bell tower toward the rear gate and the forest beyond. You decide to tend them after you have visited the bell itself. The oil pot is still half full, the cloth still has a clean corner, and the wicks in your sleeve are more than enough. You set the potting cloth down on a flat stone near the base of the tower and straighten up, pressing your hands against your lower back to ease the stiffness that comes from kneeling. The bell tower rises above you, a square structure of heavy timber and white plaster, its two-tiered roof dark against the stars. A narrow wooden stair leads up the side, each step worn into a gentle curve by the feet of those who climbed before you. Tonight, it is your turn. You begin the climb, your sandals making a hollow sound on the wood that echoes slightly in the enclosed space beneath the tower. The stairs are steep but short, and you ascend them slowly, one hand resting on the railing. The railing is a single pole of cypress, smooth as silk from years of use, and it guides you upward into the darkness. At the top, a small landing opens onto the bell chamber, a square room open on all four sides to the night air, its only roof the wide eaves above. The great bronze bell hangs here from a massive wooden beam, suspended by iron chains that have darkened with age until they are almost black. The bell itself is taller than a man, its surface a dark green-brown patina that seems to absorb the faint starlight rather than reflect it. It hangs perfectly still, a monument of silence and weight. You step onto the wooden platform, feeling the boards give slightly under your weight, and you approach the bell. The air inside the chamber is colder than outside, as if the bronze draws the warmth from it, and you can smell the faint metallic tang of aged copper and tin. You reach out and place your palm against the surface of the bell, the metal so cold it almost stings at first contact. You let your hand rest there, feeling the texture under your skin. The surface is not smooth. It is covered with a fine pattern of raised lines and characters, a sacred text cast into the bronze when the bell was made, generations ago. Your fingers trace the ridges slowly, following the curves of the ancient letters, though you do not read them. The meaning is in the touch, the connection to all the hands that have done this same tracing in the dark. The metal warms slightly under your palm, stealing heat from your skin, and you leave your hand there until the temperature equalizes and you can no longer tell where your hand ends and the bell begins. You walk slowly around the bell, your footsteps quiet on the wooden floor, and you examine it from every angle. The rim at the bottom is thick and smooth, the part that the wooden beam will strike, and you run your fingers along it, feeling for any nicks or cracks that might have appeared. There are none. The bronze is sound, as it has been for 100 years. The chains that hold it creak softly when you touch them, a low metallic sound that vibrates through the iron and fades quickly. You check the fittings where the chains meet the beam, placing your hand on each iron ring to test its security. Everything holds firm, solid, and reliable. The bell is ready for the morning. Now you turn your attention to the rope. It hangs from a metal eyelet at the center of the bell's crown, a thick cord of woven hemp as wide as your wrist. The rope drops straight down through a hole in the platform and dangles into the open space below, where it can be pulled from the ground floor. But up here, the top portion is accessible, and you crouch down to examine it closely. You take the rope in both hands, feeling its weight and texture. The hemp fibers are rough against your palms, twisted into a tight spiral that has held its shape through countless pulls. You run your hands along its length, inch by inch, searching for any frayed strands or worn spots. The rope is old but well cared for, and you find only one small area where the outer fibers have begun to separate. It is not enough to weaken the rope. Not yet, but you make a mental note to apply a little beeswax to the spot tomorrow, binding the fibers back together. For now, it will hold. You let the rope fall back into place, and it sways slightly before coming to rest. You stand at the edge of the platform, looking out over the temple grounds and the valley beyond. From this height, you can see the lanterns you have already lit, a string of small warm lights that trace the path like stars fallen to earth. The remaining 3 lanterns are still dark, and they wait for you near the rear gate. The moon has climbed a little higher, and its thin light now catches the mist that rises from the forest, turning the valley into a silver sea. You breathe in the cold air, feeling it fill your lungs and leave again, and you let your gaze wander across the dark shapes of the hills. There is no hurry to descend. The bell is patient, and so are you. After a time, you turn away from the view and climb back down the stairs, your hand once again on the smooth cypress rail. The gravel crunches under your sandals as you retrieve the oil pot and cloth from the flat stone. The 9th lantern still burns steadily, its flame visible through the small gap in the stone door, and you pause to make sure it needs nothing before continuing to the last 3 lanterns. They are spaced along a quieter path that leads through a small grove of bamboo, the stalks rising tall and straight on either side, their leaves rustling with a dry papery sound whenever the breeze stirs. You tend each one in turn, the same gentle sequence: pour, thread, strike, watch. The final lantern stands at the very rear of the temple grounds, where the path meets the forest's edge. Its light pushes back the darkness just enough to reveal the first row of trees, their trunks rough and dark, and then the forest swallows the rest. With the last lantern lit, your task is complete. The oil pot is nearly empty, the cloth blackened, the wicks all placed. You stand at the forest's edge, listening to the deep silence that lives among the trees, a silence that is not empty, but full of the slow breathing of ancient roots and the soft decay of leaves. Then you turn and walk back toward the center of the temple, passing each lantern you have lit, their flames steady and true. The path glows with a string of small lights, and you walk through them like a traveler returning home. You return the oil pot and cloth to the supply room, wash your hands again at the stone basin, and dry them on the front of your robe. The night continues, and the vigil goes on, but a small satisfaction settles in your chest, the quiet knowledge that the light will hold until dawn. The lanterns are all lit now, a string of steady flames that mark the temple paths like a constellation brought down to earth. You stand near the stone wash basin, listening to the soft trickle of water, and you feel the night pressing around you with its deep and patient silence. The work with the oil and wicks has left your fingers smelling faintly of camellia and soot, a clean kind of grime that you will wash away later. For now, there is another task waiting, one that you have been moving towards since you first rose from your cushion in the meditation hall. The wooden striking beam still rests in the storehouse, wrapped in its cloth, and it must be carried to the bell tower before the dawn. You turn from the wash basin and look across the courtyard toward the storehouse, a small building with thick earthen walls and a heavy tile roof that squats near the rear garden. The building is older than the bell tower, older than the main hall, its beams darkened by centuries of smoke and incense until they are almost black. A single lantern burns beside its door, one of the 12 you lit earlier, and its flame casts a wavering circle of light on the packed earth. You begin to walk toward it, your sandals making a soft crunching on the gravel path, the sound measured and unhurried. The stars above you have shifted noticeably since you last looked, the familiar patterns sliding toward the western hills, and you know without calculation that the night is beginning its slow turn toward morning. The path to the storehouse takes you past the kitchen garden, where the rows of vegetables are dark shapes against the paler soil. The rain from earlier has left the earth damp and fragrant, a smell of wet compost and bruised herbs that rises as you walk. A frog calls from somewhere near the garden's edge, a single low note that repeats 3 times and then falls silent. You do not stop to look for it. The sound enters your ears and passes through you, another small thread in the fabric of the night. The gravel gives way to packed earth as you approach the storehouse, and the sound of your footsteps changes, becoming softer and more muffled. The storehouse door is a heavy wooden panel set into a frame of massive beams, and it slides sideways rather than swinging open. You place both hands against the rough wood and push, feeling the weight of it, the slight resistance as it moves along its groove. The sound it makes is a low rumble, like distant thunder, and it echoes briefly against the earthen walls before fading. Inside, the air is cool and dry, carrying the scent of old wood, stored grain, and the faint metallic tang of bronze from a spare temple bell that sits in the corner under a cloth. You step inside and let your eyes adjust to the deeper darkness. The lantern outside pushes a little light through the doorway, enough to outline the shapes of shelves and boxes, but the far corners remain in shadow. You know the storehouse well. Every shelf and container has its place, and you could find what you need with your eyes closed. The striking beam rests on 2 wooden blocks near the back wall, a long cylinder of oak about the length of your body and as thick as your thigh. It is wrapped in a length of undyed cotton cloth to protect it from dust and moisture, and you approach it now, kneeling down beside the blocks. You pull the cloth away carefully, folding it into a neat square that you set aside on a nearby shelf. The beam is revealed, its surface smooth and dark, the wood grain running in tight parallel lines from end to end. The ends of the beam are slightly rounded, worn by the impact of countless strikes against the bell, and the wood there has taken on a polish that reflects the dim light like a dark mirror. You place your hands on the beam, feeling its cool weight, the solidness of it. The oak is dense and heavy, a wood chosen specifically for its ability to produce a clear tone without cracking under repeated blows. You wrap your fingers around the middle section, feeling the slight indentation where generations of hands have gripped it, a smooth depression that fits your palms perfectly. You lift the beam a little, testing its balance, and you find the center of gravity by sliding your hands apart and then together again. The beam is heavy, perhaps 30 pounds, but its weight is manageable once you find the right position. You stand slowly, cradling the beam against your shoulder and chest, one hand supporting its middle and the other steadying its upper end. The wood presses against your collarbone through the fabric of your robe, and you adjust the position until it rests comfortably. With the beam secure, you turn back toward the door, moving carefully in the dim light so that the end of the beam does not strike the door frame or the shelves. The beam extends a good distance in front of and behind you, and you must turn sideways to pass through the doorway. You do this slowly, feeling your way, your sandals shuffling on the packed earth. Outside, the starlight seems bright after the darkness of the storehouse, and you pause for a moment to let your eyes readjust. The beam rests on your shoulder like a companion, its weight a familiar presence that you have carried many times before. You begin the walk back across the courtyard, heading toward the bell tower that rises dark and silent against the sky. The gravel crunches under your sandals with a sound that is heavier now, deepened by the extra weight you carry. Your footsteps are slower, more deliberate, each one placed with care to avoid stumbling on the uneven stones. The beam sways slightly with your gait, a gentle rhythm that you compensate for by shifting your shoulder, and after a few steps you find the balance that makes the carry almost effortless. Your breath rises in small clouds of vapor, and you watch them appear and vanish as you walk. The cold air stings your cheeks lightly, and you welcome the sensation. It keeps you alert without disturbing the calm that has settled over the night. You pass the kitchen, its dark shape familiar and quiet, and you see the faintest trace of smoke still rising from the roof hole, a pale ribbon against the stars. The fire you built for your meal has burned down to its last embers, but it has left this small mark on the air, a signal that warmth was here. You continue on, the beam steady on your shoulder, and you enter the path that leads to the bell tower. The 9th lantern still burns at the tower's base, its light catching the moss and making it glow like a cushion of green fire. You stop there for a moment, shifting the beam to your other shoulder to rest the thirst, and you look up at the tower. The stairs rise along the side, their worn treads pale in the lantern light, and the open chamber at the top is a dark square against the stars. You begin the climb, and this is the part that requires the most care. The stairs are narrow, designed for a single person without a burden, and the beam makes the ascent more challenging. You turn sideways, holding the beam parallel to the stairs, and you climb one step at a time, your free hand gripping the cypress railing. Each step produces a soft groan from the old wood, a sound that seems loud in the silence but does not disturb the peace. You focus on your feet, on the placement of each sandal on each worn tread, and you do not look down. The beam's weight pulls at your shoulder, and you pause halfway up to adjust your grip, letting the end of the beam rest on the step above you while you catch your breath. The cold air fills your lungs, and you feel your heart beating steadily, a calm rhythm that matches the pace of your movements. At the top of the stairs, you step onto the wooden platform and let the beam slide carefully from your shoulder onto the floor. It lands with a soft thud, cushioned by the wood, and you roll it gently against the railing where it will wait until dawn. You straighten up and press your hands against your lower back, stretching the muscles that have tightened during the climb. The bell chamber is just as you left it, open to the night on all sides, the great bronze bell hanging in its chains like a silent giant. The air up here is even colder, fresher, and it carries the faint metallic scent of the bell itself. You walk to the edge of the platform and look out over the temple grounds. The lanterns you lit trace a winding path of light through the darkness, each one a small steadfast flame. Beyond them, the valley lies under a thin veil of mist, and the distant hills rise like dark waves against the starry sky. You stand there for a long time, letting the quiet soak into you. The beam is in place, the bell is ready, and the night is still several hours from dawn. There is nothing more to carry, nothing more to prepare. The vigil continues, but the active work is done, and what remains is simply waiting. You sit down on the platform, your back against one of the wooden pillars that support the roof, and you fold your legs beneath you. The wood is cold but not uncomfortable, and the position allows you to see both the bell and the valley beyond. You let your hands rest in your lap and you breathe slowly, feeling the rise and fall of your chest. From this height, the sounds of the night are different. The stream that rushes at the bottom of the valley is faint to hear, its voice softened by distance until it becomes a low whisper at the edge of hearing. The wind moves through the pine boughs below you, a sound like the ocean heard from far away, a constant hushing that never quite ceases. An owl calls from somewhere in the forest, its notes hollow and measured, and you count them silently as they drift across the valley. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then silence again. The stars continue their slow wheel, and you watch a single bright point detach itself from the rest and streak across the sky for a heartbeat before vanishing. A meteor, small and silent, leaving no trace. You think about the beam resting beside you, the way the wood has been shaped by use, the way your hands fit into the grooves worn by others. You think about the bell, the text cast into its bronze surface, the words you cannot read but can feel. You think about the rope hanging down through the platform, waiting for the pull that will bring the beam against the bronze. But these thoughts are gentle, without urgency, and they drift through your mind like the mist in the valley. You do not cling to any of them, you simply let them pass, one after another, while your breathing continues its slow tide. The night deepens around you and the cold begins to seep through your robe, a gradual cooling that you notice first in your fingers and then in your ears. You pull your hands into your sleeves and tuck your chin slightly, conserving warmth. The cold is not unpleasant. It is simply another aspect of the vigil, another sensation to notice and release. You have sat in colder nights, and you will sit in colder ones still. The body knows how to endure, and the mind knows how to wait. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep but to rest your vision, and the darkness behind your eyelids is warm and red with the after-image of the stars. When you open your eyes again, the sky has changed subtly, the black fading just a little at the eastern edge where the hills meet the heavens. It is not yet dawn, not even the first hint of grey, but the quality of the darkness has shifted. A subtle thinning that only someone who watches the night carefully would notice. You feel a small stirring in your chest, not excitement, but acknowledgement. The time is approaching. You will wait a little longer, and then you will rise and take up the rope, and the bell will sing its morning song across the valley. But that is still ahead. For now you remain seated, the beam beside you, the bell behind you, the stars above you, and the quiet holding everything in its patient embrace. The wooden platform of the bell tower has grown cold beneath you, and the chill has worked its way through your robe and into your bones, not painfully, but with a persistent, gentle insistence that tells you it is time to move. You rise slowly, using the pillar for support, and you feel the stiffness in your knees and hips, the body's quiet protest after sitting still for so long. The striking beam still rests against the railing where you left it, a dark shape on the darker wood, and you touch it once with your palm before turning toward the stairs. It will wait here until dawn. There is nothing more it needs from you now. You descend the worn treads carefully, your hand on the cypress rail, and each step sends a small echo up into the bell chamber above. The ninth lantern still burns at the base of the tower, its flame a steady point of warmth in the cold air, and you pass it on your way back toward the meditation hall. The gravel path crunches softly under your sandals, a sound that is now as familiar as your own heartbeat. The lanterns you lit earlier trace the way, their small flames hardly flickering at all in the still night. You walk past the main hall, its great doors closed and dark, and you smell the faint drift of old incense that always lingers around its eaves. You walk past the kitchen, where the last ember has finally died and no smoke rises from the roof hole. You walk past the stone wash basin, where the water continues its endless trickle, a sound so constant that it has become part of the silence itself. And then you arrive at the meditation hall, a long low building with paper screens and a deep porch, and you slide open the door to step inside. The interior is dark and cool, the paper screens filtering the starlight into a dim silver glow that reveals the shapes of cushions, the low altar, the hanging scroll. You know this room as well as you know your own quarters, perhaps better, for you have spent more hours here in stillness than anywhere else in the temple. You find your usual cushion near the center of the room, a round mat stuffed with cotton batting that has molded itself to the shape of your body over countless sittings. You lower yourself onto it, folding your legs and settling your hands in your lap, and you let out a long, slow breath that you did not realize you had been holding. The cushion receives you like an old friend, and the silence of the hall wraps around you like a blanket. The vigil hours are the heart of the night, the long stretch between the active work of tending the temple and the final ritual of the dawn bell. They are not empty hours, they are full of a different kind of activity, the activity of simply being present. You have learned over the years to settle into them without resistance, to let the mind and body rest in the quiet, while remaining alert enough to hear the first stirrings of morning. It is a balance that cannot be forced, a state that arises naturally when you stop trying to achieve it. And so you do nothing now except sit, your spine straight but not rigid, your shoulders relaxed, your gaze resting on the dark floorboards a few feet ahead of you. The night sounds begin to make themselves known, one by one, each emerging from the silence and then receding again. The distant rush of the mountain stream is the foundation, a low continuous sound that underlies everything else, its voice swollen by the evening rain. You listen to it without effort, letting its steady hushing fill your ears. It never changes, and yet it is never quite the same, varying subtly with the flow of water over different rocks and fallen branches. You could listen to it for hours and never grow tired, because it asks nothing and offers everything. The stream has been flowing down this mountain for longer than the temple has stood, and it will continue long after, and that thought, if it can be called a thought, brings a deep sense of peace. Above the stream's voice, other sounds appear and vanish. A night heron calls from somewhere near the garden, its cry a single hoarse note that hangs in the air for a moment before being swallowed by the dark. You picture the bird standing motionless by the water's edge, its long legs and sharp beak, its grey feathers blending into the shadows. You have seen it before, in the twilight hours, and you know it will be gone by sunrise, retreated to some hidden roost deep in the forest. The heron calls again, and this time another answers from farther away, a fainter echo that might be a different bird or might be the same sound bouncing off the hillside. The exchange lasts only a few seconds, and then the silence returns. The meditation hall has its own small sounds, the subtle creaks and ticks of an old wooden building settling into the cold. A beam overhead gives a soft groan, expanding or contracting by a fraction, and the sound travels along the ceiling like a ripple. The paper screens rustle faintly as a breath of wind finds its way through a gap, the sound so soft that you might have imagined it. And then there is the tapping, a sound you have heard on many nights like this, a dry, irregular tapping that comes from the roof above. A branch from the old pine tree that grows beside the hall has grown long enough to brush against the corner of the roof tile when the wind moves it. The tapping is not rhythmic. It comes in clusters of 2 or 3, then a pause, then a single tap, then another long pause. You have grown so accustomed to it that you hardly notice it anymore, but tonight it seems to mark a kind of time, a slow and unpredictable metronome that measures the passing of the hours in its own secret way. You sit and you listen, and the boundaries of your body begin to soften. The feeling of your hands resting in your lap, the sensation of the cushion beneath you, the cool air on your face, all of these are still present, but they no longer seem to belong to a separate self. You are simply a part of the room, a part of the night, a part of the stream's endless voice. This is not a dramatic insight, it is a quiet recognition that comes and goes without fanfare. You do not cling to it when it appears, and you do not miss it when it fades. The vigil is simply what it is, a long sitting in the dark, and you are simply the one who sits. Time behaves strangely in these hours. It does not move in a straight line, but rather pools and eddies, stretching out in some moments and contracting in others. You have no way to measure it except by the subtle changes in the world around you, the shift in the quality of the darkness, the movement of the stars that you cannot see from inside the hall but can feel in some indefinable way. You remember the incense coil that you set on the altar earlier, a green spiral of pressed sandalwood that burns slowly from the outside in, and you glance toward the altar now. The coil glows faintly at its tip, a tiny orange ember that creeps along the spiral at a pace too slow to see. A thin ribbon of smoke rises from it, pale grey against the dark, carrying the sweet woody scent that fills the hall. The coil is a clock of sorts, its steady burning marking the hours more lively than any mechanical device. It was lit at midnight, and by the time it burns to the center, dawn will be near. You watch the ember for a while, the way it brightens when a slight draught passes over it, the way the smoke curls and twists before vanishing. Your breathing has become slow and deep, matching the rhythm of the incense smoke. Each inhale brings the sandalwood scent deeper into your lungs, and each exhale sends a faint cloud of warmth into the cold air. The cold is more noticeable now that you are still, creeping in from the edges of the room and settling around you like a second robe. You feel it first in your feet, the toes growing numb where they press against the tatami, and then in your fingers where they rest folded together. You could get up and fetch a blanket from your quarters, but you do not. The cold is not a threat. It is a companion, a sharpness that keeps the mind from drifting too far into drowsiness. You have learned to sit with the cold, to let it be there without fighting it, and in time the discomfort fades into a kind of neutral sensation, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. The night heron calls once more, a single note that seems farther away now, and then it is silent for the rest of the vigil. The stream continues its low roar, and the branch taps against the roof with its irregular rhythm. Another sound joins the chorus, the distant barking of a fox, a sharp yipping that echoes across the valley, and then stops as suddenly as it began. You imagine the fox trotting through the underbrush, its red fur dark in the starlight, its ears pricked forward. The mountain is full of such creatures, going about their secret lives while the temple sleeps. You will never see most of them, but you know they are there, and their presence is a comfort. The incense coil continues its slow burn, the ember now a little farther along the spiral. The smoke drifts upward and spreads out against the ceiling, a thin haze that catches the faint starlight from the screens. You watch the patterns it makes, shapes that form and dissolve before you can name them. A curl of smoke becomes a river, becomes a tree, becomes nothing. The mind, left to its own devices, begins to drift in a similar way, thoughts rising and falling without any sense of urgency. You remember a morning from many years ago, a morning when the mist was so thick that you could not see the bell tower from the meditation hall. You had walked through the whiteness, feeling your way along the path, and the world had seemed to consist only of the few feet of gravel visible around your sandals. That memory surfaces now, vivid for a moment, and then it is replaced by another, the taste of fresh persimmon from the tree beside the garden wall, the sweetness and the slight astringency that makes your mouth pucker. You do not know why these memories come, and you do not question them. They are simply part of the vigil, part of the mind's gentle wandering. At some point, you become aware that your eyes have closed. You open them again, slowly, and the room is unchanged. The ember on the incense coil has moved a little farther, and the scent of sandalwood is stronger now, a rich, heady fragrance that fills every corner of the hall. You shift on the cushion, adjusting the position of your legs to ease a slight numbness that has crept into your left foot. The movement is small and deliberate, and it does not disturb the overall stillness. You settle again, and the numbness fades as the blood returns. The tapping on the roof has stopped. The wind has died down, or the branch has found a new position, and the silence that follows is deeper than before. You can hear the stream more clearly now, its voice rising and falling in a subtle pattern that you have never quite been able to map. Sometimes it seems louder, sometimes softer, as if the mountain itself is breathing. You listen to it for a long stretch, letting it carry you along, and the line between listening and being listened to begins to blur. The vigil hours have this quality, a softening of the boundaries that usually separate things from each other. You are not asleep, but you are not entirely awake either. You are in a state that has no name, a floating awareness that is both restful and alert. The incense ember has reached the halfway point of the spiral, and you notice this without making any calculation about the time. The night is moving forward at its own pace, and you are moving with it. The cold is intensified, and you pull your hands deeper into your sleeves, crossing your arms over your chest to conserve warmth. Your breath emerges in small clouds that you can just barely see in the dim light, and you watch them appear and disappear with each exhale. The act of watching your breath becomes the entire content of the moment. A simple, endless rhythm that requires no effort and no thought. Far away, a temple bell rings in another valley, the sound so faint that you feel it more than hear it, a low vibration that travels through the earth and the wooden floor and into your bones. Someone else is keeping a vigil, someone else is ringing a bell, and the sound connects you to them across the miles without words or names. The vibration fades, and the night returns to its steady quiet. You think about the bell in your own tower, hanging silently above the striking beam, waiting for the first light. Soon you will climb those stairs again, grip the rope, and send the sound out across your valley. But that is still ahead, and there is no need to hurry toward it. The vigil is its own reward, a time of stillness that asks nothing and gives everything. Your eyelids grow heavy, not with sleep, but with a deep tranquility that settles over you like a weight. You let them close again, and this time you do not open them for a long while. Behind your lids, The darkness is warm and red, and the sounds of the night seem to grow sharper in the absence of sight. The stream, the creaking beam, the soft rustle of the screen, all of them are clearer now, more distinct, as if your hearing has expanded to fill the space left by your closed eyes. You rest in this state, suspended between waking and sleeping, and the hours pass without measure. When you open your eyes again, something has changed. The quality of the darkness is different, a subtle thinning that you recognize immediately. The paper screens no longer show starlight, but a deeper grey, and the air feels different too, a slight stirring that speaks of the approaching dawn. The incense coil has burned almost to its center, the ember now a tiny point of orange that is barely visible. The smoke has thinned to a wisp, the scent fading. The vigil hours are coming to an end, and the time for action is drawing near. You sit for a few more minutes, savoring the last moments of stillness, and then you place your palms on the floor and begin to rise, your body moving with the slow, deliberate grace of one who has spent the night in peace. The meditation hall releases you slowly, its dark warmth lingering on your skin as you slide open the door and step out into the corridor. The air that meets you is different now, charged with a quality that was not there during the deep night hours. It is still cold, still dark, but there is a subtle edge to it, a sharpness that speaks of the approaching dawn. The stars have faded in the western sky, and though the east shows no color yet, the blackness there has begun to soften into a deep charcoal gray. You stand for a moment on the wooden boards of the walkway, feeling the change on your face and in your lungs, and then you turn toward the stone wash basin. The pre-dawn ritual is about to begin. The path to the basin is short, but you walk it slowly, your sandals making a soft clacking on the stone that seems louder now in the hushed expectancy of the hour. The lanterns you lit hours ago are still burning, though some have begun to gutter, their flames lower and more orange as the oil runs low. They have done their work through the long night, and soon the dawn will take over their duty. You pass the kitchen, its door still ajar, and you smell the cold charcoal and the faint lingering trace of your earlier meal. Your stomach is quiet now, neither full nor empty, simply at rest. The walkway turns past the main hall, and you pause there for a moment to look at the great doors still sealed for the night. Behind them, the altar waits in darkness, the incense long since burned away. Later, the acolyte will open those doors and let the morning light fall across the wooden floor. But that is not your task. Your task is older and simpler. A ritual of water and cloth and fire that prepares the body and mind for what is to come. The stone wash basin sits at the edge of the inner garden, a rough-hewn granite bowl with a hollowed center that catches the water from the bamboo pipe. The pipe itself is old, its surface mottled with lichen, and it carries a thin stream of cold mountain water that never ceases, day or night, summer or winter. The sound of the water is a constant soft music, a trickling note that has been the background of your life for as long as you have been here. You approach the basin and stand before it, looking down into the dark water that overflows the rim and runs in a thin sheet over the moss-covered stone. The surface of the water reflects the faint gray of the sky, a pale mirror that trembles slightly with the movement of the stream. You remove your outer robe and hang it on a wooden peg set into the nearby post, leaving only the thin inner garment that clings to your shoulders. The cold air bites at your skin immediately, raising small bumps along your arms and making the hair on your neck stand up. You do not flinch from it. You welcome it. this brief sharpness that clears away the last cobwebs of the vigil hours. The cold is a kind of purification in itself, a stripping away of comfort that leaves only alertness behind. You step closer to the basin and cup your hands together, dipping them into the water. The cold is shocking, a sudden numbing grip that makes your knuckles ache and your breath catch in your throat. You hold your hands there for a moment, letting the water flow between your fingers, and then you lift them, full and dripping, and bring the water to your face. The first splash steals your breath entirely. The cold water hits your cheeks and forehead like a slap, and for a moment there is nothing but the sensation of ice against skin, a bright burning that erases all thought. You gasp once, a sharp inhale that you release slowly, and then you cup your hands again and splash a second time and a third. Each time the shock is a little less, replaced by a tingling alertness that spreads from your face down through your neck and shoulders. You scrub your face with your wet palms, rubbing the skin firmly, working away the oil and dust that have settled there during the long night. You wash behind your ears, and you wash your neck where the collar of your robe has left a faint line of warmth. You wash your eyelids, and the bridge of your nose, and the corners of your mouth, every part of your face receiving the same careful attention. When your face is clean, you dip your hands again and run them through your hair, the water trickling down your scalp in cold rivulets that make you shiver. You comb your fingers backward, smoothing the strands away from your forehead, and the water drips down the back of your neck and soaks into the collar of your inner garment. The fabric clings to your skin, cold and wet, but you do not mind. This is part of the ritual, the full acceptance of the water's cleansing, and the discomfort is brief. You lift a handful of water to your mouth and rinse it, swishing the cold liquid across your teeth and tongue before spitting it into the gravel. The taste of the mountain stream is clean and mineral, faintly sweet, and it leaves your mouth feeling fresh. Now you turn your attention to your hands and arms. You push back the sleeves of your inner garment and hold your forearms under the stream, letting the water run over your skin from wrist to elbow. You rub your hands together, working the cold into the joints of your fingers, massaging the palms where the calluses from the broom and the bell rope have grown thick. The calluses are part of you now, hard yellow patches that protect the softer skin beneath, and you wash them with the same care as the rest of your hands. You scrub under your fingernails with a small brush made of boar bristle that rests on the edge of the basin, working away the traces of lamp soot and oil that have accumulated during the night. The bristles are stiff but not harsh, and they clean thoroughly, leaving your nails pale and smooth. When the washing is complete, you stand for a moment with your hands still under the stream, feeling the cold water run over your skin one last time. Then you step back and reach for the small hemp cloth that hangs beside the basin, a square of rough fabric that has been bleached by the sun and softened by use. You dry your face first, pressing the cloth gently against your cheeks and forehead, then your hair, rubbing it until the worst of the dampness is gone. You dry your hands and arms, and you pat the cloth against the wet collar of your garment, absorbing what you can. The cloth smells of clean water and fresh air, and you hang it back on its peg to dry for the next use. The cold has faded now, replaced by a tingling warmth that spreads through your skin. Your face feels tight and smooth, your hands clean and light, and a pleasant alertness has settled over your entire body. You remove your inner garment, the wet fabric clinging for a moment before you pull it free, and you fold it neatly and set it aside on a flat stone. The cold air touches your bare skin, but you do not linger in it. From a shelf near the basin, a shelf protected by a small overhanging roof, you take a fresh robe, one that has been laid out the day before in preparation for this moment. The robe is made of dark cotton, a deep indigo so dark it is almost black, and it smells faintly of the cedar chest where it was stored. The fabric is crisp and clean against your skin as you slide your arms into the sleeves and pull it around your body. You wrapped the robe so that the left side crosses over the right, a deliberate orientation that you have performed thousands of times, and you reach for the sash, a long strip of soft cotton that has been dyed the same dark indigo. You wrap the sash around your waist once, twice, and then you tie it in a simple knot at your hip, the ends hanging down in a neat fall. The knot is secure but not tight, firm enough to hold the robe in place without restricting your breath. You adjust the collar of the robe, making sure it lies flat against your neck, and you run your hands down the front to smooth away any wrinkles. The clean fabric feels like a new skin, and the sensation of being freshly washed and newly dressed is one of quiet satisfaction. You take the wet inner garment and the outer robe you wore during the night, fold them together, and carry them back toward your quarters. The walkway is still dark, but the grey in the eastern sky has lightened by a shade, and you can now make out the individual leaves of the garden shrubs, their shapes emerging from the general blackness. Inside your quarters, you place the soiled robes in a bamboo basket that will be taken to the washing area later. Then you turn to the small household altar that stands in an alcove in the corner of your room, a simple wooden shelf that holds a tiny bronze statue, a small bowl of water, and a holder for incense sticks. The altar is the heart of your personal practice, a place of daily offering that predates the temple and will outlast it. You kneel before it on the tatami mat, your knees finding the familiar depressions in the woven straw, and you sit back on your heels. The incense holder is a simple ceramic boat with a bed of white ash where the sticks are placed. Beside it lies a bundle of sandalwood incense sticks, thin brown rods that are tied together with a paper string. You untie the bundle and select one stick, holding it between your thumb and forefinger. The stick is dry and fragrant, the scent of sandalwood already rising from it even before it is lit. You place the end of the stick against the flame of a small oil lamp that burns continuously on the altar, a flame that is never extinguished, and you hold it there until the tip glows orange and a thin spiral of smoke begins to rise. You blow gently on the ember, extinguishing the flame and leaving only the glowing tip, and then you insert the stick into the white ash, standing it upright so that the smoke rises in a straight column toward the ceiling. The scent of sandalwood fills the alcove immediately, sweet and woody and grounding, a fragrance that has been associated with sacred spaces for centuries. You watch the smoke for a moment, the way it curls and twists as it rises, the way it catches the faint light from the lamp and seems to glow. Then you bow once, a slow incline of your head toward the altar, and you press your palms together in a gesture that is both greeting and letting go. You sit before the altar for several minutes, your breathing slow and even, your mind empty of any particular thought. The incense continues to burn, the ember creeping down the stick at a measured pace, and the smoke fills the alcove with its sweet haze. This is not a time for prayer in the sense of asking for things or reciting words. It is simply a time of presence, of acknowledging the stillness at the center of all things. The small bronze statue on the altar gazes back at you with half-closed eyes, its expression neither happy nor sad. and you meet its gaze with your own quiet attention. There is nothing to ask, nothing to receive, only the simple fact of sitting here in the pre-dawn darkness while the incense burns. After a time you rise from the altar, your knees pressing into the tatami, and then releasing. You stretch your arms upward, feeling the clean robe slide against your shoulders, and you roll your neck from side to side, loosening the muscles that have tightened during the long night. The pre-dawn ritual is nearly complete. You have washed the body, clothed it in fresh fabric, and sat in stillness before the altar. What remains is the final act, the culmination of the entire night's vigil. The bell is waiting in its tower, the striking beam is resting against the railing, and the sky is slowly lightening toward the moment of dawn. You slide open the door of your quarters and step out into the corridor once more. The ever-stellation tree, the gay heroes and insulation tricks across half the sky, and the first birds have begun their tentative calls from the forest's edge. A single warbler sends out a few experimental notes, a thin thread of melody that rises and falls and then stops, as if the bird itself is not yet sure that morning has arrived. You pause to listen, your clean face lifted toward the sound, and you feel a quiet readiness settling over you. The night vigil is behind you now, and the day is reaching toward you from the eastern hills. You turn your steps toward the bell tower, where the rope hangs waiting, and the great bronze bell rests in its ancient chains. The dawn is coming, and you are ready to meet it. The path to the bell tower lies before you, a ribbon of pale gravel that winds through the temple grounds and disappears into the shadows beneath the great cryptomeria trees. You step onto it with the same measured pace you have kept all night, your sandals finding their familiar purchase on the stones. The clean robe moves softly against your skin, and the cold air touches your freshly washed face with a gentle sharpness that keeps you alert. Above you, the sky has continued its slow transformation, the deep charcoal gray now giving way to a lighter shade near the eastern hills, a band of indigo so deep it is almost purple. The stars that were so bright during the vigil hours have faded one by one, and only the brightest still glimmer near the zenith, reluctant to surrender their light to the coming day. You walk toward the tower, and the tower waits for you in perfect stillness. The gravel crunches beneath your sandals with a sound that seems to belong to this hour alone, a sound that is both crisp and muted, swallowed quickly by the damp air. The lanterns you lit in the deep night still burn along the path, though their flames are now pale and thin, the oil nearly exhausted. You pass the 9th lantern at the base of the tower, its light a faint orange flicker that barely illuminates the moss around its base. You pause there for a moment, looking up at the dark shape of the bell tower rising against the lightening sky. The tower is a silhouette of heavy beams and curved roof tiles, its two-tiered eaves sweeping outward like the wings of a great bird. In this half-light, it seems larger than it does during the day, more solemn, more ancient. You have climbed those stairs countless times, and each time feels like the first time, a quiet approach to something that can never be fully known. You place your hand on the cypress railing at the base of the stairs, feeling the smooth wood under your palm, the grain worn to a silken polish by generations of hands. The railing is cool and slightly damp from the night air, and it yields to your grip with a familiar solidity. You begin to climb, and the first step gives a soft groan under your weight, a low wooden voice that speaks of age and patience. The sound does not startle you. It is as much a part of the ritual as the water of the basin or the scent of the incense. You pause after the first step, letting the sound fade into the silence, and then you take another step and another. Each step produces its own small creak, a rhythm of wood and weight that accompanies your ascent. The stairs are narrow and steep, built for a time when bodies were smaller and movements more deliberate. You climb slowly, one hand on the railing, the other resting lightly on your thigh. Your sandals find the worn depressions in the center of each tread, the hollows that have been shaped by centuries of climbing feet. The depressions are smooth and slightly cupped, and they guide your steps without any need for thought. Your body knows this staircase, and it moves upward with a calm, automatic grace. The climb is not long, but you do not hurry it. Each step is a moment unto itself, a small act of attention that prepares you for what waits at the top. The air grows colder as you rise, the breeze finding its way through the open sides of the tower. It carries the scent of pine and damp earth and the faintest trace of the bronze bell above you, a metallic coolness that you can taste on the back of your tongue. You breathe it in slowly, letting it fill your lungs and leave again. The sound of the stream that has been your companion all night grows fainter as you climb, its voice replaced by the nearer sound of the wind moving through the bell chamber, a soft hollow sigh that resonates against the bronze without producing a tone. The bell is still silent, but the air around it is not. The wind knows the bell's shape, and it plays against the metal with a gentle pressure that never quite becomes sound. You reach the midway point of the stairs and pause, turning your head to look out through the gaps in the wooden railing. From this height, you can see the temple grounds spread out below you, the dark roofs of the buildings, the pale ribbon of the path, the small dying flames of the lanterns. The main hall is a long rectangle of shadow, its curved roof black against the grey gravel. The kitchen is hidden behind the garden wall, but you can picture its cold hearth and the washed bowls on their shelf. Your quarters, the meditation hall, the storehouse, all of them rest in the pre-dawn quiet, and you feel a tenderness for them, a quiet affection for every beam and stone. This is your home, and you are its keeper, and this climb is the final act of your long night's vigil. You continue upward, and the stairs grow slightly steeper near the top, the treads narrower. You adjust your pace, placing each foot with extra care, your hand tightening on the railing. The wood of the railing here is more worn than below, the polish deeper, and it reflects the faint light of the sky with a dull gleam. Above you, the bell chamber opens to the sky, a square of deep indigo framed by the dark beams of the roof. You can see the bottom curve of the bell now, a dark arc against the lighter darkness, and you can see the rope hanging down through the hole in the platform, its hemp fibers pale and still. The sight of the bell and the rope brings a subtle shift in your chest, a quiet quickening that is not excitement but readiness. You are almost there. The final step delivers you onto the wooden platform of the bell chamber, and you stand for a moment at the top of the stairs, letting your breathing settle. The platform is just as you left it hours ago, the boards dark and smooth, the railing running around the perimeter, the great bronze bell hanging at the center. And there against the railing where you rolled it rests the wooden striking beam, its long shape dark against the wood, waiting exactly as you left it. You walk over to it and touch it with your fingertips, feeling the cool, smooth oak, the slight indentation where your hands will grip it. The beam is ready, and so are you. But the moment has not yet arrived. There is still time to stand and watch the sky. You move to the edge of the platform and place your hands on the railing, looking out over the valley. The view from here is one you have seen 1,000 times, and yet it is never the same. The hills rise in dark layers against the eastern sky, their ridges sharp and black where they meet the lightening horizon. The valley between them is filled with mist, a soft white sea that shifts and breathes in the pre-dawn stillness. The mist hides the stream and the fields in the distant village, leaving only the tops of the tallest trees visible, small dark islands in a sea of cloud. The sky above the hills has deepened now to a rich indigo, and at its lowest edge, just above the black ridge, a thin line of pale blue has begun to appear, so faint that you might be imagining it. But you are not imagining it. But you are not imagining it. The dawn is coming, and the sky is making its first tentative gesture toward the day. You stand and watch, and the minutes pass without measure. The pale blue line thickens and spreads, pushing the indigo higher, and the stars that were still visible a moment ago now fade entirely, one by one, until the sky is empty of them. The mist in the valley begins to stir, its surface rippling as the first breath of morning wind moves across it. A bird calls from the forest below, a single clear note that hangs in the air and then is joined by another and another, until the trees are alive with the tentative music of waking. The sound rises up to you on the cold air, and you let it wash over you, a chorus of small voices greeting the light. The rope hangs still at the center of the platform, its thick hemp strands pale in the growing light. It dangles from the crown of the bell and passes through the hole in the floor, a straight vertical line that seems to connect the earth and the sky. You turn from the railing and approach the rope, standing before it with your hands at your sides. The rope is as thick as your wrist, woven from countless fibers that have been twisted together into a single strong cord. It is old but well cared for, and it smells of hemp and the faint oil that is worked into its fibers to keep it supple. You reach out and take the rope in both hands, feeling its weight and texture, the slight roughness against your palms. The rope is cool and still, and it waits for you with a patience that matches your own. You do not pull yet. The sky is still dark enough that the moment is not quite right. The bell must ring at the first true light, when the sun's edge touches the horizon and the world shifts from night to day. You can feel that moment approaching, a subtle change in the quality of the air, a brightness that is just beyond the hills. You stand with the rope in your hands, your feet planted firmly on the wooden platform, your body still and ready. The striking beam rests nearby, and you will take it up when the time comes. For now, you simply wait, breathing slowly, watching the eastern sky where the pale blue is now streaked with the faintest hint of rose. The night is almost over, and the bell is almost ready to sing. The rope rests in your hands, its hemp fibers cool and slightly rough against your palms, a texture you have known for so many nights that it feels like an extension of your own skin. You stand at the center of the bell chamber, your feet planted on the smooth wooden boards, your gaze fixed on the eastern sky where the pale blue has now spread across the entire horizon. The line of rose that was only a hint moments ago has deepened into a soft band of coral and gold, a thin ribbon of color that separates the dark earth from the lightening heavens. The mist in the valley below has begun to glow faintly, catching the first rays of the sun that has not yet risen, but is already sending its light ahead like a messenger. The moment is very near now, and you can feel it in the quality of the air, in the stirring of the birds, in the subtle quickening of your own heartbeat. You take the rope in a firmer grip, your fingers wrapping around the thick braided cord, and you turn toward the striking beam that rests against the railing. The beam is heavy when you lift it, but the weight is familiar, a solid presence that grounds you in your body. You cradle it in both arms for a moment, feeling the smooth oak against your clean robe, and then you shift your grip to the worn indentation at its center, the groove that fits your palms as if it were made for them. The beam has been shaped by countless hands over countless years, and tonight your hands join that long lineage, adding their own small pressure to the wood's memory. You carry the beam to the rope and set one end of it on the platform, letting the other end lean against your shoulder while you make the final adjustments. The rope hangs straight and still, and you position yourself so that the beam will swing in a clean arc, its rounded end striking the bell exactly at the rim where the bronze is thickest and the tone is truest. You loop the rope around the beam, threading it through the carved groove near the striking end, and you pull it tight so that the beam is suspended from the rope, hanging horizontally just below the bell's great flared mouth. The rope creaks softly as it takes the weight, a sound of hemp fibers stretching and settling, and you check the knot twice to make sure it is secure. The beam now hangs at waist height, parallel to the platform, its striking end hovering just a hand's breadth from the bronze surface. You place both hands on the beam's opposite end, the end that you will pull, and you take a moment to find your balance. Your feet spread slightly, your knees soft, your shoulders relaxed. The bell looms above you, dark and silent, its patinaed surface catching the first faint light of dawn and holding it in a deep green gold shimmer. You breathe in slowly, a long deep inhale that fills your lungs from bottom to top, and you feel the cold morning air spread through your chest like a quiet announcement. The stream below continues its endless murmur, the birds continue their tentative calls, and the mist continues its slow rippling across the valley floor. All of these sounds are present, but they seem to recede now, to move into the background as your attention narrows to the single point of contact between the beam and the bell. You pull the beam back, drawing it away from the bronze, and the rope moves with you, sliding through its iron eyelet with a soft whisper. The beam comes back smoothly, its weight resisting just enough to let you feel the mass of it, the stored energy that you are gathering in your arms and shoulders. You pull it back until the striking end is a full arm's length from the bell's rim, and you hold it there, suspended, the potential of the moment coiled in the rope and the wood and your muscles. And then you release. You do not push the beam forward, you simply let it go, allowing the weight and the rope's tension to do the work. The beam swings in a clean, silent arc, its rounded end cutting through the cold air, and it meets the bronze with a contact that is both gentle and immense. The sound blooms forth not as a strike, but as a presence, a deep resonant hum that seems to begin in the center of the earth and rise upward through the tower, through the platform, through the soles of your sandals, and into your bones. The note is low and round, a vibration so complete that you feel it as much as you hear it, a physical sensation that travels up your legs and settles in your chest. The bell sings its first note of the morning, and the sound rolls outward from the tower in a great invisible wave, spreading across the courtyard, across the garden, across the mist-filled valley. The first note hangs in the air for a long time, its resonance slowly fading but never quite disappearing. You can hear the overtones shimmering above the fundamental pitch, higher frequencies that sparkle like light on water, and you can hear the subtle beating of the bronze as it vibrates against itself, a slow pulsing that gives the note a living quality. The bell is not simply making a sound, it is becoming sound, its entire massive form transformed into vibration, and you are standing at the center of that transformation, your hands still on the beam, your body still humming with the echo. You wait until the first note has faded to a ghost of itself, a shimmer barely audible above the morning breeze, and then you pull the beam back again. The second pull is identical to the first and yet entirely different because the air has already been awakened by the opening note. You draw the beam back, feeling the familiar resistance, and you release it with the same gentle letting go. The second note blooms from the bronze, overlapping the fading tail of the first, and the two tones interweave for a moment, creating a chord that is richer and more complex than either note alone. The second ring is slightly louder, or perhaps it only seems so because the world has been prepared for it. The silence already broken. The ears of every creature in the valley now turn toward the tower. The sound rolls outward again, a second wave following the first, and you imagine it traveling down the mountain, crossing the fields, reaching the village where the farmers are just beginning to stir from their sleep. They will hear the bell and know that the temple is awake, that the night has ended, that another day has begun. You pull the beam back a third time, and the motion has now become a rhythm, a slow, measured cadence that matches the beating of your heart. Your arms move with an economy that comes from years of practice, no wasted effort, no unnecessary tension. The beam swings, the bronze sings, and the third note joins the lingering resonance of the first two, building a tapestry of sound that fills the bell chamber and spills out into the world. The wooden platform beneath your feet vibrates like a living thing, and you can feel the vibrations traveling up through the pillars of the tower, shaking loose tiny drops of moisture from the roof tiles, stirring the dust that has settled in the corners. The whole tower is singing with the bell, a sympathetic resonance that amplifies the sound and gives it a warmth that the bronze alone could not produce. With each ring, the sky in the east grows brighter. The band of coral and gold has now spread upward, painting the undersides of the few high clouds with shades of rose and amber. The mist in the valley has begun to lift, its edges fraying into wisps that catch the light and blow like pale fire. The birds have fallen silent during the ringing as they always do, waiting for the great sound to finish, but you know they will resume their chorus as soon as the last note fades. The world is holding its breath, and you are the one who will tell it when to exhale. You pull the beam back for the fourth ring, and then the fifth, each release a perfect repetition of the one before. The sound does not grow monotonous. Instead, it deepens, each new note building on the foundation of the previous ones, until the air itself seems to thicken with vibration. You can feel the sound pressing against your eardrums, a gentle pressure that is not uncomfortable but immersive, as if you have stepped into a river of bronze and are being carried along by its current. Your thoughts have become quiet now, emptied out by the sheer fullness of the sound, and there is only the rhythm of the pulling and the releasing, the swinging and the singing. On the sixth ring, you notice that the sun has crested the ridge of the eastern hills. The first direct ray of golden light shoots across the valley and strikes the upper tier of the bell tower's roof, illuminating the dark tiles with a sudden warmth. The light has not reached the bell chamber yet, but you can see it on the eaves above you, a bright edge that grows wider with each passing moment. The bell rings into the sunlight, and the sound seems to change, becoming brighter and more open, as if the light itself is amplifying the vibration. You pull the beam back for the 7th ring, and the 8th, and the 9th, the numbers flowing without your conscious count, your body keeping time in its own ancient way. The ritual calls for 18 rings, a number that represents the 18 bonds of delusion in the old teachings, each ring a loosening of attachment, a release into clarity. But you do not think about the meaning as you pull. You simply continue the rhythm, letting the numbers take care of themselves. The 10th ring sends a flock of crows up from the cryptomeria trees, their black wings beating against the golden sky, their harsh calls swallowed by the bell's great voice. The 11th ring echoes off the far hillside and returns as a faint ghost, a delayed response that overlaps with the 12th. The 13th ring vibrates through the wooden floor and rattles the small door of the lantern at the tower's base. The 14th ring seems to hang in the air longer than the others, sustained by some trick of the morning breeze, and you listen to it fade with a kind of reverence. Your arms are beginning to feel the work now, a warm ache that spreads from your shoulders down to your wrists. The striking beam is heavy, and each pull requires a deliberate effort, a gathering of strength that you release into the swing. But the ache is not unpleasant. It is the body's way of participating fully in the ritual, of offering its own small sacrifice to the morning. You adjust your grip slightly, shifting the beam so that your hands rest on a fresher section of wood, and you continue. The 15th ring, the 16th, the 17th, each one a complete world of sound that rises and falls and rises again. The 18th and final ring is different. You know it is the last, and you pull the beam back with a particular care, holding it suspended for a heartbeat longer than the others. The sun has now fully cleared the hills, and its golden light spills into the bell chamber, striking the bronze surface and making it glow with a deep, warm radiance. The patina that was dark green in the starlight is now a rich amber brown, and the raised characters of the sacred text catch the light and hold it in bright relief. You release the beam one final time, and it swings forward and kisses the bronze with a tenderness that seems impossible for such a massive object. The last note blooms forth, the deepest and longest of them all, a sound that seems to gather up all the previous notes and carry them upward into the light. You stand still, your hands still on the beam, and you let the final resonance wash over you, through you, around you. The bell has spoken its morning greeting, and the valley has heard it, and the day has officially begun. The 18th ring fades slowly, its deep resonance thinning into a shimmer of overtones that hang in the air like motes of dust caught in sunlight. You stand motionless at the center of the bell chamber, your hands still resting on the wooden striking beam, your body still humming with the accumulated vibrations of the ritual. The silence that follows the final note is not an empty silence, but a full one, a presence rather than an absence, as if the bell's voice has not disappeared, but has simply changed form, dispersing outward into the valley and inward into your bones. You let out a long, slow breath that you did not realize you had been holding, and you feel your shoulders drop slightly, releasing a tension that had become so familiar during the ringing that you no longer noticed it was there. The beam rests heavy in your hands, its purpose now fulfilled, its rounded ends still faintly warm where it kissed the bronze. You loosen the rope from the groove near the striking end, working the knot with fingers that feel thick and slightly numb from the sustained effort. The hemp fibers resist for a moment, then yield, and the rope slides free with a soft sigh. You lower the beam carefully, letting its base rest on the wooden platform while you hold it upright against your shoulder. The weight of it seems different now, lighter perhaps, or maybe your body has simply grown accustomed to its presence. You carry it to the railing and lay it down gently in the same spot where it rested before the ritual, its dark length parallel to the wooden balusters, its surface catching the golden light that now floods the bell chamber. You turn back to the rope and check it one more time, running your hand along its length from the eyelet at the bell's crown down to where it passes through the platform. The fibers are warm from the friction of the pulls, and a faint dust of hemp particles has settled on the wood below. The rope is held perfectly, its twist still tight, its strength undiminished. You let it hang straight and still, and you watch it for a moment as it sways ever so slightly, a slow pendulum motion that will continue for a while before settling into perfect rest. The bell above you is silent now, but its surface still vibrates at a frequency too low to hear, a subsonic hum that you can feel in your palms when you press them against the bronze. You do press them, briefly, a gesture of farewell until the next dawn, and the metal is warm where the beam struck it, a small patch of heat among the cool green-brown patina. Now you walk to the edge of the platform and place your hands on the railing, looking out at the world that the dawn has revealed. The transformation is nearly complete. The sun has fully cleared the eastern hills and now floats just above the ridge, a disk of pale gold that is still soft enough to look at directly, its edges slightly blurred by the last remnants of mist. The light pours across the valley in a great diagonal flood, illuminating the treetops and the fields and the distant rooftops of the village that you can now see clearly for the first time since yesterday. The village is a small cluster of dark roofs and pale walls nestled beside a bend in the stream, and a few thin columns of smoke are already rising from its chimneys, pale grey threads against the golden air. The farmers are awake, their day beginning as yours is ending, and the bell's voice has reached them, carried on the still morning air. The mist that filled the valley during the night is now in full retreat, lifting away in wisps and curls that catch the sunlight and glow like pale fire. Some of the mist clings to the hollows and the deeper folds of the hills, but most of it has risen high enough to become a thin layer of cloud that hovers just above the ridgeline, its underside painted rose and gold. The stream at the bottom of the valley has emerged from the whiteness, a silver ribbon that winds through the green fields, and you can see its surface sparkling where the sunlight strikes it. The sound of the water has returned to your awareness, no longer the distant roar of the night, but a gentler murmur, a daytime voice that seems lighter and more cheerful. The birds have resumed their chorus with renewed energy, as if the bell's silence has given them permission to sing. A bush warbler sends out its long liquid notes from somewhere in the garden, a sound that rises and falls and rises again with a sweetness that catches in your chest. Sparrows chatter in the eaves of the main hall, their tiny voices overlapping into a constant busy music. A crow calls from the cryptomeria tree, its rough voice a counterpoint to the finer songs, and you watch it launch itself from a high branch and circle once above the temple before heading out across the valley. The world is fully awake now, and the night feels very far away. You stand at the railing for a long time, letting the morning wash over you. The warmth of the sun has begun to reach the bell chamber, and you feel it on your face and hands, a gentle heat that is welcome after the long cold hours of the vigil. You close your eyes and tilt your head back slightly, letting the light press against your eyelids, and the darkness behind them turns red and gold. The fatigue that you kept at bay during the night has begun to creep into your limbs now, a pleasant heaviness that reminds you of all the hours you spent awake. It is not an urgent tiredness, not the kind that demands immediate sleep, but a deep and quiet weariness that settles over you like a second robe. You could stand here for another hour, or you could descend the stairs and begin the morning routine. Either would be acceptable, and neither requires a decision just yet. A rooster crows from the village below, its distant call thin and clear in the morning air, and the sound seems to mark the end of something. You open your eyes and look down at the temple grounds, at the paths you swept last evening, at the lanterns you lit in the deep night, at the wash basin where you cleansed yourself in the cold water. All of these places are familiar, and all of them are now bathed in the golden light of morning. The lanterns have burned out entirely, their flames extinguished when the oil finally ran dry, and they are now just small stone shapes along the path, their work for the night complete. The paper lantern at the gate has also gone dark, its oiled paper still intact, its frame waiting to be lit again at dusk. You hear a sound from below, a soft sliding of wood, and you look down to see the young acolyte emerging from the main hall. He is small and dark-haired, dressed in a grey robe similar to your own, and he moves with the careful, deliberate steps of someone who is still learning the rhythms of the temple. He carries a wooden bucket toward the wash basin, and you watch him pause there to draw water, the morning light catching the pale curve of his cheek. He does not look up at the tower. He is focused on his task, his young face serious and attentive. You feel a quiet affection for him, this boy who will one day climb these stairs and ring this bell in your place. But that is far in the future, and for now he is simply carrying water, and you are simply watching. The lingering vibration of the bell has finally faded completely from the platform, and the only sound now is the wind and the birds and the distant murmur of the stream. You push yourself away from the railing and turn back toward the center of the chamber. The rope hangs still and straight, the beam rests against the balusters, and the bell looms above you in its ancient silence. You take one more look around, making sure everything is in its proper place, and then you begin the descent. Your hand finds the cypress railing at the top of the stairs, and you step down onto the first worn tread. The wood groans softly under your weight, a sound that is already familiar from the climb up, and you continue downward, one step at a time, your pace unhurried. The stairs are brighter now than they were during the ascent, the sunlight filtering through the gaps in the wooden siding and painting stripes of gold on the worn treads. You can see the grain of the wood clearly, the growth rings and the small knots, the polished depressions where countless feet have passed. Your sandals make a soft clacking on the wood, and the sound echoes slightly in the enclosed space. The air grows warmer as you descend, the chill of the high chamber giving way to the milder temperature of the ground, and you feel the warmth seeping back into your fingers and your ears. By the time you reach the bottom of the stairs, the cold has become a memory, and your body feels loose and easy. You step off the last tread and onto the gravel path, and the world seems to open up around you. The temple grounds are fully illuminated now, every stone and leaf and blade of grass picked out in sharp detail by the morning sun. The moss on the base of the bell tower glows a brilliant green, still damp from the night's rain, and tiny droplets of water sparkle on its surface like scattered jewels. You pause there for a moment, looking at the ninth lantern. its stone door still slightly ajar from when you lit it hours ago. You slide the door closed with your fingertip, a small gesture of completion, and then you turn toward the storehouse to return the striking beam. The path to the storehouse takes you past the kitchen, and you smell the smoke of a newly lit fire drifting from its door. The acolyte has started the morning meal, and the scent of burning kindling mingles with the clean smell of damp earth and the faint sweetness of the last incense from the main hall. You carry the beam over your shoulder, its weight a familiar companion, and you walk slowly, letting the morning soak into you. The gravel crunches beneath your sandals, and the sun warms the back of your neck, and the birds continue their endless singing. The night vigil is over. The bell has rung, and the echoes are still traveling outward across the valley, growing fainter and fainter until they become indistinguishable from the silence that holds everything. The gravel path crunches softly beneath your sandals as you walk toward the storehouse, the striking beam balanced across your shoulder like a companion returning home. The morning light has grown stronger in the time it took you to descend the tower, the sun now a full golden disk that clears the eastern hills by a hand's breadth and paints the entire temple grounds with a warm amber glow. The shadows that were long and dark when you climbed the stairs have shortened and softened, retreating beneath the eaves of the buildings and gathering at the bases of the old trees. The air is still cool in those shadows, but wherever the sunlight falls, a gentle heat has begun to rise, and you can feel it on the back of your neck and on your hands where they grip the smooth oak of the beam. The night is fully gone now, and the day has taken its place, and the quiet rhythm of the morning routine is about to begin. You pass the main hall and you see that its great doors have been slid open, the dark interior now visible as a rectangle of shadow with a single shaft of sunlight falling diagonally across the wooden floor. The acolyte must have opened them while you were still in the bell chamber, and the incense he lit this morning is already drifting out through the doorway, a thin ribbon of sandalwood that mingles with the smell of damp earth and fresh pine. You do not stop. The acolyte has his tasks, and you have yours, and the temple runs on this quiet division of labor, each person moving through their morning like a separate instrument in a single soft piece of music. The storehouse waits at the end of the path, its earthen walls warm in the sunlight, the tile roof still dark with the memory of the night's rain. You slide open the heavy wooden door, the rumble of it familiar and low, and you step inside the cool, dim interior. The air smells of old wood and stored grain and the faint metallic tang of the spare bell in the corner. You carry the beam to its resting place, the two wooden blocks near the back wall, and you lower it carefully, letting its weight settle into the grooves that have been worn into the wood over generations. The beam comes to rest with a soft thud, and you take the folded cotton cloth from the shelf where you left it hours ago, shaking it out and draping it over the beam to protect it from dust. The cloth falls in soft folds, covering the worn striking end, and the smooth grip, and the dark grain of the oak, and the beam becomes simply a wrapped bundle, patient and still, waiting for the next night. You stand for a moment in the quiet of the storehouse, your hands now empty, the weight that you carried all morning no longer pressing against your shoulder. Your body feels light without it, almost buoyant, and you roll your shoulders once, feeling the muscles loosen. Then you turn and leave the storehouse, sliding the door closed behind you with a low rumble that echoes once and then fades. The morning light seems brighter after the dim interior, and you blink once, twice, letting your eyes adjust. The path back to the main courtyard is familiar, and you walk it slowly, your sandals making their soft clacking on the stones, your hands swinging gently at your sides. At the corner of the kitchen, you pause. The acolyte is inside, tending the fire, and you can hear the soft clatter of a wooden ladle against a pot, the sound of water being poured, the quiet shuffle of his sandals on the wooden floor. The smell of cooking rice drifts out through the smoke hole, a clean, sweet scent that makes your stomach stir faintly, reminding you that you have been awake all night and that your body will soon want its morning meal. But not yet. There is still one more task to complete, a task that bookends the night, the same task you performed in the evening as the light was fading. The paths need sweeping again. You walk to the tool corner near the kitchen entrance, the small sheltered nook where the broom and rake and sickle are kept. The bamboo broom leans against the wall where you left it last night, its long handle smooth and pale, its bristles splayed and worn. You pick it up, feeling the familiar weight and balance, the slight unevenness where the bristles have worn shorter on one side. The handle fits your hands perfectly, and you carry the broom out into the courtyard, the bristles brushing lightly against the gravel with a soft, hushing whisper. The courtyard stretches before you, the flat open space between the main gate and the main hall, its surface a mosaic of pale stones and dark earth and patches of moss. The rain from the night has left the ground slightly damp, and the stones gleam faintly in the sunlight, their edges outlined in tiny beads of moisture. A few leaves have fallen during the night, loosened by the rain and the wind, and they lie scattered across the courtyard like dark stars against the pale gravel. There are pine needles, too, slender brown strands that have gathered in the crevices between the stones, and a few small twigs that the crows knocked from the cryptomeria trees when they took flight at dawn. The courtyard is not dirty, not by any ordinary measure, but it is not quite clean either, and the sweeping will restore it to its proper state. You begin at the main gate, the point where the path enters the temple grounds, and you position the broom at the edge of the gravel. The first stroke is long and slow, the bristles moving across the stones with a sound like a soft exhale, gathering the loose debris into a small pile. You step forward and sweep again, the motion flowing from your shoulders down through your arms and into the broom, a movement that your body knows so well it requires no thought. The leaves and needles collect in a neat line at the edge of your stroke, and you work your way across the courtyard in a series of unhurried arcs, each one slightly overlapping the last, so that nothing is missed. The sun continues its slow climb, and the courtyard grows warmer, the dampness evaporating from the stones in faint wisps of steam that you can only see if you look closely. The birds are still singing, their chorus now settled into the steady background music of the day, and the stream at the bottom of the valley adds its constant low murmur, a sound so familiar that you would notice its absence more than its presence. The acolyte emerges from the kitchen once, carrying a bucket of water toward the main hall, and he nods to you as he passes, a small gesture of acknowledgment that you return with a slight inclination of your head. Neither of you speaks. There is no need for words in this quiet hour. You sweep around the base of the bell tower, where the gravel is littered with a few small fragments of dried moss that fell when the vibrations of the bell shook the roof. The moss is brittle and grey, and it crumbles under the broom's bristles, breaking into tiny pieces that you gather into the growing pile. You look up at the tower once, the dark wood and the curved eaves, the bell chamber where you stood not long ago. The rope is invisible from here, hidden inside the structure, but you can picture it hanging still and straight, and you can still feel the echo of the bell's voice in your chest, a phantom vibration that lingers long after the sound has faded. The echo seems to live in the warm wood of the tower, in the stones of the path, in the very air of the temple grounds, a presence that will remain until the next dawn when the bell sings again. You continue sweeping, moving past the wash basin where the water still trickles from the bamboo pipe, its sound a constant, soft note. The stone basin is full to overflowing, the surface of the water catching the sunlight and reflecting it in a bright shimmer that dances on the underside of the nearby eaves. You sweep around the basin carefully, lifting the broom to avoid disturbing the moss that grows at its base, and you collect a few wet leaves that are stuck to the stones. The leaves are dark and soft, already beginning to decay, and they leave a faint earthy stain on the gravel that will fade as the sun dries it. The courtyard leads you toward the main hall, and you sweep along its wide stone steps, the broom moving across the flat surfaces with a gentle rasp. The doors of the hall are open, and you can see the acolyte inside, arranging the morning offerings on the altar. A small bowl of rice and a vase of fresh branches. The incense he lit is still burning, the smoke rising in a straight column toward the high ceiling, and the scent reaches you where you stand, sandalwood and something else. A hint of citrus from the fresh branches. You do not enter the hall. Your task is outside, in the sunlight and the open air, and you continue your slow progress along the steps and around the corner to the side garden. The side garden is a small space tucked between the main hall and the meditation hall, a patch of raked gravel and carefully placed rocks, with a single maple tree that leans gracefully over a stone lantern. The gravel here is finer than the courtyard gravel, pale grey and almost white, and has been disturbed by the night's rain, the smooth surface marred by small craters and rivulets. You set aside the broom and take up the wooden rake that leans against the wall, a rake with long teeth that are spaced just so. You begin to rake the gravel, drawing the teeth through the pale surface in long straight lines that curve gently around the rocks and the base of the lantern. The sound of the rake is different from the broom, a crisp scratching that is somehow just as soothing, and the lines it leaves behind are like the ripples on a pond, a pattern of order and calm. You work slowly, your movements deliberate, and the gravel garden gradually returns to its proper form. The craters disappear, the rivulets smooth out, and the pattern emerges, a series of concentric rings around the rocks, straight lines along the edges, a flowing design that leads the eye without demanding attention. The maple tree casts a dappled shadow over the gravel, its leaves moving slightly in the breeze, and the pattern of light and shadow plays across the raked lines, adding a layer of complexity that will last only as long as the sun stays in this particular position. By afternoon, the shadows will have shifted, and the pattern will look different, and tomorrow you will rake it again, and each time it will be slightly new. When the gravel garden is finished, you return the rake to its place and pick up the broom again. Your body is growing tired now, the long night and the physical work combining into a deep weariness that is not unpleasant, but simply present, a heaviness in your limbs that reminds you of all the hours you have been awake. You sweep the last section of the path, the stretch that leads from the meditation hall back to your quarters, and you gather the final pile of debris, a small mound of leaves and needles and dust. You fetch the bamboo basket from the kitchen corner and scoop the pile into it, the debris rustling softly as it falls. You will carry the basket to the compost heap behind the kitchen, where the leaves will decay and return to the earth, and the cycle will continue. The village below has fully awakened now. From the edge of the courtyard, near the main gate, you can see the rooftops and the fields, and you can hear the distant sounds of morning activity, the lowing of an ox, the ring of a blacksmith's hammer, the faint voices of people calling to one another across the fields. The smoke from the village chimneys has thickened, rising in pale columns that lean slightly to the east, carried by the same breeze that stirs the pine boughs above you. The bell's echo has long since faded, but its message has been received, and the day has begun in earnest for everyone who lives within its reach. You carry the bamboo basket to the compost heap and empty it, the leaves and needles tumbling out in a soft cascade. The compost smells of earth and decay, a rich dark scent that is the foundation of all growth. You turn the pile once with a wooden fork, mixing the new debris into the old, and then you set the basket aside and walk back to the kitchen. The acolyte has finished his preparations and a simple breakfast waits on the low table, a bowl of rice and a cup of warm tea, the steam rising in gentle curls. You wash your hands at the basin one more time, the cold water a final shock of alertness, and then you sit down to eat. The rice is warm and soft, the tea is fragrant and green, and you eat slowly, looking out the open door at the courtyard you have just swept. The paths are clean, the gravel is smooth, the lanterns are dark, and the bell tower stands silent against the blue morning sky. The temple is at peace, and you are at peace, and the day stretches out before you like a long, quiet road. Soon you will sleep, and tonight you will rise again, and the broom and the oil and the beam and the rope will all be waiting, as they always are, for the next vigil, the next dawn, the next ring of the great bronze bell.